Hello, yellers. Welcome back to Why Am I Yelling? Musings from a middle-aged menopausal mom, the podcast where we talk about life, love, and all the messy, beautiful lessons in between. I'm your host, Krista Rizzo, coach, speaker, mom, and the woman who was once told she was too loud and turned it into a brand. How about that? Today's episode is a juicy one. We are talking about how to use your voice as your superpower, or at least identify that your voice is your superpower, right? Not just your literal voice, but your ability to speak up, advocate, ask for what you need, and tell your story. So I had this idea for this topic of conversation when I was walking the dog this very morning. And it was because I was thinking about a conversation I had with my best friend also this morning. And we were talking about our kids and how they are very good at advocating for themselves. In fact, much better than we were at that age, and probably still are at the ages that we are now, although we've gotten better about it, right? So if you grew up in certain generations like I did, yell out to the Gen Xers listening here, right? You probably heard some version of children should be seen and not heard. Translation to that is stay quiet, don't rock the boat, don't take up space, right? We Gen Xers disappeared on the weekends, right? We were out there figuring things out without really having any help from our parents. And that's no dig to our parents. It was just the way they were parenting, right? The narrative, however, is shifting. Parents today are raising kids who know their voices matter. We are encouraging them to speak up, right? We are flipping that script. And I think that we adults need that reminder too, which is why we're having this conversation, right? Because when we don't use our voices, we lose our power. I mean, just look at what's going on in the world around us, which is a whole nother conversation. But hello, what is actually going on? So let's talk about the silence of past generations, right? Let's start with where we came from. For a lot of our parents and grandparents, parenting was about obedience and survival. My parents were baby boomers. They were raised by the greatest generation, I think is what my grandparents were called. But my grandparents lived through the Great Depression. And they lived in, a time of, work and war and, rationing and lack. And they were raising these kids who, had to work and had to appreciate their work and don't ask questions. And so those parents, our parents, the Gen Xer parents, pass that on to us, right? It was, you don't talk back. You don't question authority. You definitely don't share your feelings at the dinner table, right? Our parents grew up stoic and, I had my mom was very emotional. So it wasn't uncommon for us to experience that, know that she, cried at the Hallmark movies and, was very loving and gave a lot of hugs and shared that love, right? But she also lived by this mantra that, again, children should be seen and not heard, quote unquote, right? So it means when we were kids, we weren't if there was a dinner party going on, we weren't allowed to be downstairs, mingling with our parents. If there was, we were all going out, we had to be away from the group, right? It was, shrinking to not be seen, right? It was swallowing our words. It was avoiding asking for help, right? My favorite 4-letter word on the planet, other than the 4-letter words that I also like to use, is help, H-E-L-P, right? I think asking for help is a strength and not a weakness, but that's not how it was perceived years ago. And I didn't learn that lesson until I was in my 40s, by the way. So those patterns obviously and clearly followed us into adulthood, right? How many of you have ever had to bite your tongue in a meeting, or you bit your tongue in a meeting because you had a thought but you didn't want to speak up because you thought you would be reprimanded, you would be ridiculed, you would be thought to sound bossy or bitchy or any of those things, right? You stayed quiet in a relationship. You didn't want to, make your partner mad or make that whoever you were with at the time in that relationship feel uncomfortable, or you've avoided advocating for yourself in places as important as a doctor's office. Like, raise your hand, because one or more of those things have happened to me in my life, so I'm not alone in this, right? That is the echo of the old rules, of the children should be seen and not heard, of the you should be grateful that you have this job or that you're in this relationship, because we were, crazily enough, brought up to believe that we're only good enough, not that we could be better, not that we are better than where we came from. Although my mom used to say things like, I want my children to have more than what I had, right? So they sent us to college and they, gave us more, and they raised us in a bigger house than what she was raised in, and all that kind of weird shit. But it never was use your voice. I have spoken in past episodes about, where Why Am I Yelling came from and the idea of it, but it's because I have a big mouth. And when I get excited about things, my volume goes up. And when I get mad about things too, my volume goes up. But I get excited about things a lot more than I get mad about things. And so my volume goes up because that's just me. There's really no explanation for it, right? But anytime my volume went up, she would say, why are you being so loud? Why are you yelling? Literally, she would say, why are you yelling? Right? So I, from a very young age, was taught to learn how to silence my voice. And that's not to say that I wasn't encouraged to share my feelings or say what was on my mind. It wasn't even thought of. Right? I think especially for us, menopausal women, the menopausal moms who are listening to this, or even whoever is listening to this, we have had an epiphany at some point in our middle years. Mine was in my early 40s. But we figured out that we're not going to get in trouble for speaking up. In fact, it could be quite the contrary. By voicing our opinions or asking for help, we have been able to step into our true confidence. Like, we know we're badass. Everybody else just needs to fucking accept it, right? Humans are badasses, and our voices matter. Our feelings matter. And we have definitely, at least I know I have, and the people that I am friends with who are parenting, with me, parallel to me, we have definitely parented differently than our own parents parented us. And I think every generation does it differently, right? Technology has come into play in my generation as I'm raising my children. It wasn't a thing when my parents were raising me. That's not to say that, our parents who are still with us aren't, technology users. We're the ones who are teaching them how to do it, or our children are teaching them how to do it. They didn't have to parent around it. So there are different, obviously with every generation comes a different set of rules that pops up, or set of things and experiences that pop up that we all have to learn about and know. And for us, I think it was heavily technology centric. I think for, the Gen Xers and millennials who are now raising children, it's about keeping our kids safe. It's about learning about things like, schools and education and keeping our children safe in schools. Like, that stuff was not really stuff that was even thought about when we were growing up as Gen Xers, right? I mean, are you kidding me? Could you even imagine what that would have been like? But can you also imagine not encouraging your kids to use their voices or share their feelings or be vulnerable with you today? I am also not naive, right? I know that there are people out there who still believe in the children should be seen and not heard narrative, right? But I think that narrative is falling quickly by the wayside. So how did this flip in parenting come about, right? Today, parents are saying children should be seen and heard and respected, right? We have allowed our children in our house to have thoughtful conversations with us. We encouraged them to have thoughtful conversations with us about all the things. When we were making the decision to relocate from New York City to our home in Connecticut during COVID, we sat our kids down and had multiple conversations with them about whether or not it was the best thing for our family, whether or not it was the best thing for them. Their father and I definitely had ideas about it, but we wanted to know what their thoughts were. And we made the decision to ultimately relocate from the city to the country. We don't even live in the suburbs. We live in the country. Because our kids gave us their input. We knew that it would be advantageous for not just them, but all of us in some respects to make that decision, right? So giving them the opportunity to be part of the conversation in our own homes, right? Naming their feelings, using words to solve conflicts, asking questions, advocating for themselves at school, not getting in trouble, right? I'm not a parent who typically gets phone calls home from school or anywhere, right? My kids they don't get in trouble. But I've gotten, a random phone call from here or there or whatever. My kids are not afraid. Like, they know that the school's calling, right? The school's telling them, I'm going to call your mom because of this, right? But they're not afraid to walk in the door and say, yeah, this happened and here's why. Because they know that we're going to deal with it in a rational way, right? It can feel uncomfortable for those of us who weren't raised this way, right? And I'm going to use an example because it was uncomfortable for me several years ago when my then 3-year-old, who is now almost 20, reminded me that I could not tell him how to feel. We were in a grocery store, very small bodega, on a Friday afternoon after I picked him up from daycare. It was probably 5:30 in the evening. I was tired from a long day of work. He was tired from a long week of, being schlepped around and going to daycare and being picked up and all the things. And he was probably 3 or 4 years old at the time. And I needed to stop at this store to pick up some stuff for dinner. And I said to him as we left, we're going to run over to Rachel's and pick up, some things. And he was already, as we were walking out of his daycare, giving me grief about it. No, I don't want to. I don't want to. I don't want to. And we lived, we walked home from school. And it wasn't that far of a walk, but we walked home from school or daycare. And we made it into this very small corner store in Brooklyn, in New York City. And it was crowded with people because it's after work and people are going to pick up their veggies or whatever they're picking up at the local corner store, fruit stand corner store. And he had a meltdown on the floor. He didn't want to be there. And I'm now, tired and overwhelmed and embarrassed and having all of the feelings that parents have, because we know as adults that if you just stop crying, we can get out of here quicker, we can get home quicker, you can be playing with your toys quicker, and everything will be fine, and I will be able to feed you because I know that you're probably hangry at this point. So I'm saying things to him like, stop crying, everything's going to be okay, stand up, whatever. And he looked at me and he said, you can't tell me how to feel. Probably something that he learned at daycare. They were very smart people there. We loved them so much. But I looked at him and he stopped me dead in my tracks. And I said, you know what? You're right. I don't have that agency over you to be able to tell you how to feel. But I can, as your mom, who is 33 years, literally to the day, we share the same birthday, me and that one. I have 33 years of experience on you, and I can help you through these feelings. Because I know how it's going to turn out. So from that day on, when my little 3 or 4-year-old cherub said to me, you can't tell me how to feel, I took those words to heart. And since then, I have parented and coached and taught and encouraged that. Whether it is through parenting, through getting through grief, through getting through whatever it is that you're getting through in your life, no one else can tell you how to feel. And that is a huge flip in a script as we are parenting our children today forward, right? If I had said that to my mother, you can't tell me how to feel, she might have been like, what the fuck are you actually talking about? I'm telling you. Because I said so. Remember that? Because I said so. I use that every once in a while, for sure. Right? Here's that shift. This isn't about being disrespectful, right? It's about building humans who know their voices matter. And if they learn that at age 3, at age 0, the power they will carry with them into their adulthood is massive. It's massive, right? So why do adults still struggle? Because the kicker of this all is, right? I'm saying all these things that are like, oh, I hope light bulbs are going off in your head. But I'm saying all these things because many of us are raising kids to use their voices. But we, the adults, still struggle to use our own. Right? We tell our daughters to speak up, but we apologize for asking for a raise or asking for, something at work or wherever. Right? We encourage our sons to share their feelings, hopefully, but we downplay our own anxiety and overwhelm. We tell our kids that they are powerful, but we will shrink ourselves to make other people around us feel comfortable. This is not about blame. This is about awareness. And we can't change what we learned growing up, but we can make a conscious choice to rewire it and present it in a way that makes it okay for us to use our voices and really fully understand that our voices matter too. Why Am I Yelling became a podcast, it became a coaching business, it became a thing because I had to recognize that HELP, my favorite 4-letter word, was something I could do. I could ask for help. Even when I lived under the premise that as the woman in the relationship, in the family, and the mom, and the wife, and all the things, I was taught to believe that I had to carry everything on my back. I had to be able to have a full-time job, have babies, grow inside of me, and deliver them, and raise them, and cook the dinners, and do all the laundry, and have all the schedules, and make everybody else's life easier while not tending to my own. And I think, raise your hand, yellers, if you have ever felt like that. It feels overwhelming, and it led for me to burnout, which will be another conversation for a different podcast episode, right? But teaching yourself that your voice matters, that, these things, we have this superpower, and it's our voice, and being able to use that to magnify our expression and our feelings and our love and our excitement and maybe our disappointment at some times is okay. So, what does it actually mean to use your voice as a superpower? It means that you can advocate for yourself the way we teach our kids to advocate for themselves at work, at home, in our relationships. We can name our needs without apology, right? Again, my favorite 4-letter word, HELP, help. I need help. I need this. It's okay to say what you need. It means you can tell your story even if your voice shakes. And our voices and our stories don't have to be dramatic and trauma-filled and all of those things, although I'm sure we all carry some of that in our stories. There's no such thing as perfect, right? So telling your story, even if it makes your voice shake, is a superpower. Asking questions when something doesn't feel right. My best friend's daughter, who I love like my own, is advocating for herself. She's asking a question of somebody because it doesn't feel right. She shouldn't be doing this. This is too much for her. I need to understand this is the parameters that I was given. Why are we stepping outside of those parameters. It's okay to ask questions. Speaking the truth, even when it makes others uncomfortable. Another real world example, right? Like what's going on out there in the world. Speaking the truth. It's not always comfortable for people to hear, and it doesn't have to be in a big, again, dramatic or traumatic or any kind of way. But your truth matters and your story matters. And it's okay if other people feel uncomfortable. In fact, I encourage uncomfortability sometimes because that's when really good dialogue happens. Your voice is literally the tool that will change the script for you and for everyone who is watching you and supporting you and standing with you, or even doesn't, who is, maybe doesn't agree with you. And if you have children, well, they're fucking watching all the time. Full stop, right? Every time you speak, every time you do something, they are watching and they are learning that it is safe for them to do the same thing. It is safe for them to use their voices. It is safe for them to stand up for what they believe in. It is safe for them to share their feelings and share their emotions and build on that. And that is a recipe for successful work situations, successful relationships, successful friendships, successful parenting relationships with your kids. Hard for some people, but definitely worth it. So let's talk about some practical ways for those of us who still feel like we need to reclaim our voices. Right? If you're listening to this and you're thinking, well, this all sounds great, but I don't even know where to start. Here's a few little baby steps for you. Notice when you shrink. Pay attention to the moments you want to speak, but then you don't. Or think about times that you have had an experience where you've wanted to speak up, but you haven't. Awareness is our first step, right? It's our first step in practical ways to reclaim your voice is awareness. Notice when you shrink. Next one, practice in safe spaces. Use your voice with people you trust. A friend, a partner. Get out a piece of paper and journal. I'm a big fan of the journaling. I have journals all over my house that I have been using for years. It is a great way to get your feelings out and really stream of conscious your thoughts. I love it, right? So number 2 is practice in safe spaces with people you trust. Number 3, reframe conflict. Speaking up does not mean you are rude, right? It means you're being honest. It means you're sharing your thoughts and your feelings, even if, again, it makes somebody else uncomfortable. It doesn't, reframing a conflict doesn't make it rude. It actually sometimes can be helpful for a resolution. Number 4, using I statements. Instead of saying, you never listen to me when you're having a conversation with somebody, say, I feel unheard. I feel unheard when this happens. I feel X, Y, and Z when that happens. Right? Instead of putting the blame on somebody else in a conversation, express how you feel in that moment, how you feel in this situation. I feel hurt. I feel overwhelmed. I feel sad when this happens. Use I statements. That's number 4. Number 5, celebrate small wins. Did you ask what you needed today? That's a win when you ask for help. Did you ask for what you needed today? Did you say no without guilt? Those of us who are moms, we know mom guilt, quote unquote, is real. I try not to, buy into it, but it has definitely happened to me. But no is a full sentence. I said that to a friend of mine a few years ago, and she's like, I take this with me a lot. Not no but with an explanation. No is a full sentence. You can just say no. That's perfectly okay. But learning how to say it without the guilt, that's another win, right? So celebrating those small wins, being able to use an I statement in a conversation, that's a win. When usually you're like, you don't listen to me, or you don't do this, or you don't do that, instead of the finger pointing, right? Acknowledging that you can't tell other people how to feel. That is a win, because for so long, especially us parents, we tell our kids, stop crying, stop this, everything's going to be okay. You know what? That's because we know that everything probably is going to be okay. But guess what? You should also be able to share your feelings, right? So celebrate the small wins. Every time you use your voice, we reinforce, hello, that superpower every single time. So, let's recap what we just learned, yellers. Past generations definitely told us to stay quiet. Current generations are flipping that script. And you get to decide which story you want to carry forward. Your voice is not too loud. It's not too much. It's not too inconvenient. It is powerful. It is necessary. And it is yours. Right? This week I want you to do one thing. Say the thing that you've been holding back. Right? Whether it's in a relationship, at work, or even to yourself in the mirror. Say it. Because your voice is your superpower and the world needs it. We need to know what's in there. That's it for today's episode of Why Am I Yelling? I will be back here next week with more stories, more laughs, and probably another reason to yell. Because if you know me, you know. Until then, be loud, be bold, and for the love of all things holy, use your voice. I love you guys. Have a great one.